I don't think so.
I don't want to talk about how Reboot was the first CGI TV show. That's been done to death. I want to talk about its fun, colorful, uniquely designed show that had a cast go through adventures, comedy, drama turning points, from writers who created a series that could be watched by anyone because they went for quality in their work, pushing boundaries, dealing with rules, and a prime example of using your limitations to create a universe that was never done before. In 1990, computers were very limited in what they could design, render, and animate, especially in a short time frame, so the writers incorporated a reason why everything looks the way it does. The universe takes place in someone's computer system, a living, breathing world of characters, all for one purpose: to challenge the user to games. When I first heard about it, the thing that hooked me was not the CGI. It was going into games. The cast changing into players. You can go anywhere, do any type of mission. 1 week Medieval Knights. The next, Mortal Kombat ripoff. To us, a game is a game. To them, it's a life and death situation. It doesn't stop there. The universe has its own life and story. When you watch Reboot, you can see the layers, the plot, character backgrounds, locations, and jokes. They were building this show with computers. Why not use that as the setting? So Mainframe was born. Mainframe is the primary location the series takes place. It's a city that floats above a sea energy since they couldn't simulate water. Anything that comes and goes from Mainframe flies through portals, including boats, which are connected to the web outside the supercomputer. Mainframe is broken up into different sectors with a central building, the principal office, holding the city's core operations, as well as home for Fong. He's Mainframe's first administrator, mentor, and command.com controller. The central core is basically DOS. They even do a Pong joke. Fong is virtual Yoda. He started out as a basic character. You needed an info dump, that's where you got it. The good thing about the writers is they wouldn't leave characters on the wayside. Fong would get involved in later arcs. He wouldn't just spout out advice. He'd see some of his suggestions go bad, rethink his ideas, lots of times break down like any one of us and start complaining and screaming, "Fix the problem!" He loves pretending to be the cool head. He's not. Fong is a part of Mainframe's binome people. They're a reference to ones and zeros, which is the types we usually see the most. But there are binomes that go up to the number 9. Binomes are the most common people seen throughout Reboot. Their designs can be different depending on their jobs. Some, like Fong, have a fully designed head. Others use wheels or are attached to railings to serve the diners. Binomes are fully capable to work alongside sprites, including the ability to reboot if caught inside a game. What's a game, you ask? During normal activities, Mainframe is your regular city. People go on dealing with their lives, going to school, having fun, just like humans. But the city can be invaded by GameCubes. They had GameCubes before Nintendo. GameCubes are controlled by the user. The user was left ambiguous. We have no idea who the user is. We don't even understand if Mainframe is an experiment or whether it's just someone's regular PC. When the user starts a game, a GameCube is loaded into a random section of Mainframe. It can happen at any time without warning. It takes around 1 minute for the program to land or load. Be grateful that no one had solid-state drives back then. If the cube lands on top of you, you're now a part of the game. Anyone outside the cube can't get in. You can't escape unless you beat the game, which means beating the user. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you lose, the GameCube destroys the area it's in, severely injuring sprites and binomes or fully corrupting their data into nulls. That's what's cool about Reboot. Things have weird names, but when I started to understand computers at a technical level, it all made sense. In fact, I had to use a null to make the intro of this video. You use nulls to store tracking data in After Effects. With GameCubes invading the city, they need a guardian that protects its people. This is where Bob comes in. Bob is a specialized program sprite that's come from the supercomputer. Sprites are all the human-looking characters. Bob is specifically made to fight GameCubes and viruses that endanger Mainframe. He has an advantage over regular sprites. Glitch, his wristbound computer, basically is a hacking tool. It allows Bob to manipulate or interface with various systems. He could use Glitch as ways to control code, to repair damage done to the city or access restricted areas, as well as gain information on the various game cubes. While it is a hacking tool, it has limitations. It can't, under normal cases, cheat your way through a game to beat the user. Now, about Bob, he's not your normal hero. He plays it up. I'm the best person in the universe. I save the day. That's not always the case. Many times he needs help from his friends in order to stop the bad guys. He has his flaws. He's dense in areas. When it comes to dealing with people, he's strict. So he comes off as standoffish. He'll save the day, but he's so fixated with that job, he's on duty to protect the city whatever way he can. He has to defeat the user every time or people die. It's happened a few times, and it wasn't pretty. I think that's one of Bob's biggest flaws. If he fails, it hits him like a truck. His sole purpose is to save lives. He needs help in order to get through it. That's where Dot and Enzo Matrix come in. Dot's name is probably known the most out of the whole cast, since everyone who's owned a Game Boy remembers it saying Dot Matrix screen on the top. Even Bob's name means best of bread, the top of the line. Enzo, on the other hand, is the only character that has no computer reference or meaning. He's just called Enzo because they wanted to use an Italian name. Dot's main function is running her diner located on the Broadway sector of the city, plus taking care of her little brother and his dog Frisket. Not only that, she runs other businesses. She has a knack to multitask. She could have 50 vid windows open, broker deals, talk to algorithm theater, set up a free day at floating park. While Enzo is going crazy about Bob, Frisket's trying to eat Dot's waiter, but she does overwork herself. There are times where she's so fixated on keeping her business thriving, Dot tends to ignore the subtle things, which is why Bob and Dot click really well together, although Bob is pretty stupid when it comes to her. On top of constantly dealing with game cubes, Enzo wants to go in them. He doesn't treat them seriously. You feel sorry for Dot sometimes. Enzo, normally I kind of hate the kid that goes crazy, but what made him different? He learns. He wasn't like Dennis the Menace, who always screws up. As he went through games and a lot of tough parts of his life, he got put into a lot of positions that he didn't enjoy. One dumb episode, he was chosen to be the princess Bob had to rescue. Since I'm talking about the games, why is the show called Reboot in the first place? When binomes and sprites enter any game made by the user, they can tap their personal icons, which access the game's information, allowing them to reboot into the characters that take place for the missions. Rebooting is random. You have no real control over what you get picked as. Like in Enzo's case, he was picked to be the princess. Bob and Dot in the pilot episodes were space pilots. Get it? All characters have icons, including Frisket. They act primarily as identifiers, PIDs for short, information for the system. All user access is controlled by these icons. You don't want to lose or damage your icon. In later seasons, icons were expanded into safety devices. Fans remember the praise and the amazing stories, but Reboot also suffered from a lot of problems. Story and with censors at ABC, the station that broadcasted the series in the US. One of the things the show always ran into is actions they would want Bob to do. Censors would say, Bob can't do this, Bob can't do that, kids will mimic him doing this, and that's bad. Kids could potentially mimic anything and make it bad no matter what. That's where parenting comes in. Hello? So the writers would constantly get idiotic restrictions or notes that usually made no sense. Sounds like a certain company and their rules. So they started making fun of the censors. They put in jokes everywhere. There's one time Bob had to crash through a window and do a roll. Broadcast standards and practices didn't allow it. So they came up with a mode and glitch called BSMP, which made the glass disappear and pop back on. It got beyond stupid when it came to Dot. When they first showed her design, ABC and the censors had a problem with her breasts. Dot is not sexualized in any way. It took forever to even have Dot kiss Bob. They wanted her breasts removed. It's one of the factors why ABC dropped the series while it was popular. They would come up with episodes that were intense but didn't cross any lines, but ABC didn't like it. Mind you, this came out the same year Gargoyles came out. Who owns ABC? Disney. Who owns Gargoyles? Disney. So Gargoyles is fine, but Reboot is bad. Because of that nonsense, they intentionally had an episode that was themed Halloween Enzo was dressed up in Michael Jackson's Thriller outfit, while Dot was dressed up in Elvira's outfit. That's when they actually gave her breasts and pulled the screw you to the network, while also breaking the fourth wall on the audience. Thank you, censors, for giving them good material. Even when the world's going down the drain, they'll make episodes go left field. They'll just write stuff that's funny, and they never screwed that up. Many times, you can have a comedic moment fall flat in scenes. They had the magic touch. They even had Mike the TV. He's a character that basically narrates over things, screams, yells, bothers the characters. Never one time did I want him gone. You could see they didn't focus the show on one target audience. So you'll have one-time biomes dressed up as Sailor Moon and Power Rangers, while other episodes do a X-Files ripoff while getting Gillian Anderson to voice her parody character. That's the beauty of Reboot. It has a very flexible universe allowing all kinds of ideas and random thoughts because they can get those random things to flesh out a character or expand on the plot. Find out why Dot is so fixated on work? Here's a throwaway joke in season 1 blown up into a dramatic reveal. The combination between the CGI animation and the top-of-the-line writing is why Hasbro chose the Mainframe company in relaunching the Transformers franchise. If it wasn't for their talents, Transformers probably would have not come back for a long time. Now, they didn't just have GameCubes as the bad guy. That would be boring after a little bit. Mainframe had its own problems, two big ones called Megabyte and Hexadecimal. Megabyte is the almost perfect villain, one who doesn't yell, one who comes up with plans that nearly work, and is more intelligent than the main characters. He always tries to find ways in harnessing a power source, manipulating Bob in order for him to get things, going as far as even hiring bounty hunter like Mouse, who had ties with Bob in the past. The series started episodic. Megabyte would cause a problem, Bob solved it, a GameCube would make everyone go nuts, but you could see Megabyte after each failure would learn something and would never do the same thing again. He's not invincible. Lots of times he gets screwed by his people, mostly hack and slash. They're his main lackeys, usually causing Megabyte pain. What really made Megabyte, why you fear him, is the way Tony J voiced him. When Megabyte wins, you can just hear the love, the pain he gives people, but he almost never lets his emotions through. I always think villains are better when they restrain themselves. You can't read them or the hero pushing their buttons to screw them up. The best part of Megabyte, his personal forces were called the ABCs. I can't think of any better name for villains. Reboot, if you were a kid growing up in the 90s, you've heard basically everyone from some other series. The charm and the reason the characters feel lifelike are because of them. The voice cast from Michael Benyard to Gary Chalk had fun doing these parts. While Megabyte is the collective one, Hexadecimal is another beast entirely. She resides in a damaged section of the city called Lost Angles, with a bridge that leads to nowhere. For a while, we had no idea what happened. Corrupted data would usually end up here, nulls especially. Hex herself is insane. She literally wears her emotions on her face with masks. She's almost like Two-Face. She needs the masks to express herself, just like his coin. We don't really have an understanding what happened to her, but she wields great power. She's able to manipulate the environment. She has an intelligence that's close to Megabyte. She basically sees the world on another plane. She brings chaos to order. That's why she's called Hex, and doesn't matter which side she's on. She's the sister of Megabyte, but has no problem betraying him when it suits her. People mostly try to leave her alone. It's basically her fortress of solitude. You wouldn't think Hex would be important to the series, but this is Reboot. No one gets forgotten. Like I said before, the series initially was episodic, mainly because ABC wanted people to come in and out. But we did get episodes that gave us background. The biggest blank slate the show had was the Web and the Guardians. We only see Bob, but inner workings, no clue. The first look to Bob's past was with Mouse. Mouse is a hired gun. She really doesn't care who she does business with. Pay her good, she'll do it. This is why Bob doesn't like being with her. It's similar to the Batman-Catwoman dynamic. Bob knows she has a good heart, but she never likes playing by the rules. But she does fall for the guy who loves the rules. She bounces around the good, bad girl line all the time, but after a weird shrinking mission involving going into Enzo, she got a little softer. That's when you finally open up to Mouse. She's more than just money. While she does like Bob, Mouse knows Bob really likes Dot, but she loves playing around with his feelings just to torment him. She would come in and out of the series through the first 2 seasons. With the increase of problems between ABC and Mainframe Entertainment, they got fed up with them, so when season 2 finally premiered, after the first 2 episodes, the show started doing arcs. We finally saw some of the bigger threats that could come from the web. One really big moment when some sort of squid monster took over Hex. It even took over Megabyte, merging both Hex and Megabyte. Each time, it was able to manipulate the 2 viruses. Not only Hex and Mega are siblings, they're from the same virus. They were broken off from each other. They used to be called Kilobyte. With this new monster, it endangered the city, stealing its energy. Even Mouse came back and tried to get rid of it for a job. This blew up in her face, so much that it caused a tear to form. Tears are unstable energy portals. If controlled, could act as a gateway to other areas, especially areas that are off limits, like the supercomputer. Everything started going down the drain. They needed to close the tear that the monster used to escape, where Hex and Megabyte asked for a truce between the people of Mainframe. With Megabyte's intelligence and the city's principal's office working together, they could get it done, and I believed it for a little while. Hex suffered the most in the series. Megabyte wanted her dead, a monster took her over, she can't really control her powers, and is always used in some manner. So you felt sorry and wanted all this to be done and over with. I really had hoped Mega and Hex would become neutral. These web monsters would be the new baddies. But of course, no. The second season ends on the worst cliffhanger imaginable. Megabyte tricks everyone, turns on Mainframe's CPU army, captures Bob, crushes Glitch, and sends Bob through the tear, having no idea where Bob would end up. The city has no guardian, so Megabyte takes Mainframe over. To make it sting even harder, the show's opening had an intro speech. Bob talked about the show. They replaced it with Megabyte's speech taking the city over.